Dr. Liz Anderson-Peacock has been described as insightful, playful, and in awe of the human spirit. A chiropractor since 1986, she is also an educator, coach, and author. Happily married and now a grandmother to 4, with one more on the way, unique kiddos, her work has always been focused around elevating human potential and the conversations we have inside our head that also impact the world outside our head. Thank you for joining me.
Absolute pleasure and delight. Thank you for the invitation.
So, what led you originally to become a chiropractor?
Well, I would say there's really a couple of stories. And one of them was when I was in university. I was en route to going into medicine, but I had a scholarship to go do a Bachelor of Science degree. So I decided to do that. And after a couple of years, I watched my friends that went into medicine in comparison to my friends that went into this weird thing called chiropractic. And I'd never heard of chiropractic before. But after they got back after their first year in their professional programs, there was a distinct difference. And my friends that were in medicine, they were stressed, they were exhausted, a lot of them were on different kinds of drugs to manage their stress. They were very competitive. They talked about an environment when they happened to be at school where people would destroy other people's experiments so that they would kind of fail so that they could get ahead. It was that whole powering over. And then that was in comparison with my friends that went into this weird thing called chiropractic. And honestly, night and day difference. They were talking about potential. They were talking about, I want to get my hands on people. I want to touch them. I want to see how they are functioning. I want to see how they can heal. And it was like this just different conversation. And that kind of led me into a little bit more curiosity. And I didn't make a decision at that point in time. It was more like monitor, carry on with my program. Then in my 4th year of university, I hurt my low back. And all I understood chiropractic for at that time was for low backs and for some neck stuff. So I went to my first chiropractor, and it was really an interesting experience because she was asking me about not just my back, but about a number of things in my life. And I was somewhat confused because I didn't know what they had to do with my low back. And then when she started to connect all the dots together, it started to make sense. So she talked about, the low back is attached to something. It's attached to the rest of the spine. We need to look at the whole spine because a problem in one area can cause another problem in another area. But through all of that is this nervous system that helps us to interpret and respond to the world. So that was kind of, great, but the pivotal piece was she asked me about other elements in my health. And I had been through a barrage of tests. And I guess the best way to put it was years of misery in the standpoint of being a little kid. I went through 10 years of allergy shots, which never helped my allergies. And from spring through to fall, I had 2 bedrooms. I had a bedroom with an air purifier in it, and I used to take drugs. And I remembered thinking back in the 60s, pyrabenzamine, Dime-Tap, Allerus, I would take one of them and I would switch them around, glass of water, chew them up, thinking if I chew them up, this is as a 6-year-old, if I chew them up, then I'll be healthier sooner, meaning no symptoms. So when this chiropractor is asking me about, what was causing your allergies, and it was environmental, so pollen's in the air. And she asked then a couple of other questions. So would you be in agreement that if you and I are breathing the same air, we would both be taking in the same pollens? I'd have to say yes. Doesn't like all the pollens go to my nose and none to hers. And then she said, well, if pollens cause allergies, then why, if we're both breathing the same pollens, you have symptoms and I don't? That was something I had never thought of before. And that was the light bulb moment for me because I said, I don't know. Tell me more. And so then she started to talk about how the nervous system is this master controlling system that interprets the world and it has to make a response. But if it isn't running in the ideal way, it could overfunction, underfunction, or change how it adapts or functions. And in my case, it was overreacting to something that was, pollen's in the air, and I would have that runny nose, the cough, the drippy eyes, the itchy eyes, that whole thing. And from the moment I had my first adjustment, 80%, 85% of my allergies went away. And that's what led me into becoming a chiropractor. So I get into school, I get into my professional program and graduate. And something happened between the going into school and coming out of school. And when I first started, I was disillusioned and disheartened in practice because I felt like I was just a carpenter fixing people up, letting them go back out. Nothing changed in their life. It was like, hey, doc, great. Thanks for the crack, and I'm going to come back when I'm ready. And that's not what I went into chiropractic for, but that's sort of what I was trained. That's how I was molded and sculpted through my schooling. So I had again, one of those moments where you're in absolute indecision. Remember thinking, I think I'm going to leave the profession because this is not what I thought it was going to be. And I looked in my library, and there are no mistakes. There's a piece of garbage in between two books. So I pull out this piece of garbage, this white piece of paper. And if you can imagine, it was my letter I wrote over 4 years before as to why I wanted to become a chiropractor. And in it, I'm talking about vitalistic principles. I'm talking about the body's ability to heal itself given the right conditions. I'm talking about the nervous system and how it functions and elevating people's potential. And I wasn't doing any of it. And it was one of those moments where I just broke down and cried. Thankfully, I was alone. And I said, I need to change everything because this is so not going to work for me. And it was almost like a springboard effect. So I left my partner at that time because we were in a relationship that wasn't really going in a direction either one of us really wanted. I left the city I was in, and I left the practice. And I literally moved to the town that I wanted to be in, where I had family and connection. And I opened up a practice with $10,000. That was back in 1989. And within 6 months, it was a completely full practice to the point that I sold it to my kids just a few years ago. And now I completely see children out of my home, and they're referred to me usually by chiropractors or other healthcare professionals. And I will either do a consult and sort the kids out and send them back for care with instructions, or I will take a little bit of time and start to sort them out. And then once we get over the initial big concerns, then I send them back for their wellness care to their chiropractor. So it's been an amazing journey, that's to be sure.
What do you enjoy most about practicing, about seeing kids? What is it that gets you excited?
It's a potential. It really is a potential. And if there's any point in time we can have a profound impact on how that body's able to interpret the world, it's really from the ages of 0 to 6, and even more from 0 to 1, because of the way that I like to say it's like a foundation, is that if this is your bottom of your pyramid, you want your pyramid level and functioning really well, because as you start building things on top of it, you need to make sure that base information is firing on all cylinders, that it is doing what it's supposed to, because otherwise what will happen is we start adapting around the deficiencies. And yes, we still have growth and development, but it's just there's just a difference in how it occurs. And yes, I totally get, we have neural networks and we have this incredible plasticity of the brain. But what if you're working from the get-go at the ideal versus having to catch up and recreate an adapted ideal? And looking at, especially with kids, they change so quickly. The results can come in such a profound way. And I think a lot of that is because they haven't had, number one, the years of that molding and sculpting. And number two, because they are little sieves for everything that comes in, they get it. And there's a lot of sort of heart-to-heart communication or intuition in dealing with children. And also recognizing when you're dealing with children, you're also dealing with parents. So you're kind of dealing with more than just one person in front of you, that's to be sure. But there's this place that they are able to get these results that are, I'm constantly astounded and humbled by it. I guess that's the best way of putting it. But when you see the light bulbs coming on, that's the magic.
So you're seeing the light bulb coming on in these children.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you can see the nuances just in how they're able to do certain things in their life. So, the bigger questions I ask a lot of parents is, once we get all the data transfer on, why they're there, what makes it better or worse, if it's a condition, because many people come in for wellness care and they want to just elevate potential versus waiting for the problem to show up. But it's defining what is health. And what I find fascinating is I've stopped defining it for people. I want them to define it for themselves, but with a little bit of help. So quite often I'll ask a parent, what is a healthy child? Describe to me what that looks like. And they'll, come up with 2 or 3 things, really because it's not something they've ever really spent any attention or mindfulness on. But then I start asking other questions. How do healthy children move? How do healthy children sleep? What do healthy children eat? What do healthy children watch on television, or do they? Well, how do healthy children manage their stress? How do healthy children play with other kids? How do healthy children poop? So there's all these different ways that we can be expanding health physically, chemically, spiritually, interrelationship wise, the time that they spend with their self. There's so much there's so much more to health than just the simple, oh, I feel okay. And when we can build a model in that with parents, then it's a matter of, how can I help them get what they want for their child? Where does chiropractic fit in that piece? And then what are the other things that the parent can explore that's going to help them get there as well? Because there's a lot of things that are outside of what I would say classical chiropractic, but they're things that we can still spend some attention on and measure where they are now to where they are going to be in the future. And also parents start to think differently. Their mindfulness is very, they're at a heightened awareness. I guess I can put it that way.
So you're triggering them to, the difference is when you teach somebody, right? When you explain things to them, they're going to have a different response in their body than when you ask them a very specific question.
Exactly. And that's the transformational piece. Is I don't want kids and parents to go out similar to where they were. I want them to be able to turn their brain on and be different because they've had an experience or they've had a thought that changes how they see things. And as a result, they grow, take more responsibility, and recognize their part in everything, really.
And I would think that when you take that approach, you're getting the parents, because they're engaged, right? They're going to become better patients and follow through more likely on your recommendations than if they're passive.
Oh, absolutely. They're an active participant. And then the other piece too is then tying in from that history into the evaluation. How do you make the unseen seen? And you see, that's the difference between if we look at the body as a mechanistic view, meaning we're a parts, and let's look at all the little parts, and then we'll pull apart the parts and put them all together, and then that creates a human being. We know we're so much more than parts. But the key is parents don't necessarily understand or know what we're looking for, but there's elements when we're doing our assessments that we can make real for parents. So there's subtle things. There's like posture. There's like, when we come down the spine and we see some of those muscle twitches. All of those have a deep meaning to a chiropractor. Even doing a straight leg raise, if that leg's coming up and turning, that means a lot to us. It doesn't mean a lot to the parent until we point it out to them. If we see the breathing where there's chunks of the spine that aren't moving and other areas have got that beautiful sine wave, that means a lot to us as well. So it's really about making the unseen seen. How do we describe with our hands what we're experiencing so that the parent can see it in their mind? And then also the attachment piece between what the goals are what their goals are that they want for their child, what we're seeing, and if there's a gap. So if it might be getting them back to normal to then elevate improvement into higher potential, or elevate potential right from the get-go.
So it sounds to me like when you're meeting with parents that you're also probably, I'm putting words in your mouth, you're probably also asking them about the medications they're taking and how they are helping them get better.
Well, that's part of the history. Absolutely. That's knowledge transfer, because you want a good sense of where's this child at. And so, what are the medications? Why have they been put on it? What do they understand it? How do they work it? I'm not able to comment to tell them whether they're right or wrong with that. It's inappropriate. It's not my scope of practice. But I want the parents to start to really think about what they're doing. And at the same time, there's sometimes these opportunities where we can bridge and co-care with another professional. So let's say I have a child that has respiratory challenges, which may be defined medically as asthma, and I'm not treating asthma. I'm clear with that. That's not what we do. But it's amazing how some of these children, when they start to function differently, their immune system reaction functions differently, their over responding settles down, and as a result, they can change the use of the medication. So that's the piece that I want that parent really informed with, so that there's a good communication piece, that they can do some trials with their with whoever the specialist is that they're seeing, and see if there's some modulating things that way. Or the same thing too, if you have a child that has, ADHD and happens to be on, again, medication as well. So it's a matter of, having a deeper understanding and recognizing that we're coming from this in a different perspective, and it's no better, no worse, it's different. And as a result, there can be a lot of positive consequences, which sounds like an oxymoron, but positive outcomes that we do need to monitor with other professionals as well.
Yeah, I really love that because I know ADD and ADHD is out of control in the US. Is it the same thing in Canada?
It is. It is. It's a diagnosis that is, yeah. I mean, I don't know the statistics. I would love to see a study as to how much it's actually overdiagnosed as well. But I used to do something in seminars where I used to ask all the doctors how many had various symptoms, and I would slowly run down the list of ADHD and ADD, and almost every hand in the audience was going up. And I was thinking, where's that creativity for some of these children? And we know certain things, like, for example, ADD, ADHD is higher in boys. We know that. But boys learn by movement. We know that they function better with movement. So to sit at a desk at the age of 5 and 6 and 7, I don't know if that's really the best strategy for some of these boys.
I don't think it's good for anybody.
Well, I mean, we're chiropractors, right? So
Right.
we know it's not good for anybody.
Right, right. My daughter went to a Waldorf school where she learned how to knit in first grade, and it wasn't unusual for kids to be knitting while they're taking their classes, including the boys, right?
Right.
Or do a lot of movement. I do think that makes a difference. Um,
Absolutely.
so you also teach for the International Chiropractic Pediatric Association a course called Transforming Practical Experience to Family Practice. Can you share a little bit about what goes on in that course?
Okay, so my big thing is I'm an implementer. I'm a high driver implementer. So I go to a seminar, I implement. I don't have any challenges with that. But in teaching since, oh my gosh, I don't know, 96, I see a lot of doctors that go to a seminar, they learn great stuff, but then they don't do it in practice. They don't implement it. And it could be that a piece that's just too chunked, too big, that they're just going like, forget the whole thing. So this module is really about you doing a SWOT on yourself. So you have to really dive deep and look at your strengths and weaknesses, and you doing a history, an exam, or an evaluation, your report of findings, your regular office visit, your outcome assessment, your communication to parents. There's a lot of areas that we're looking at, and looking at what you know versus what you do compared to your ideal, and then we chunk it down. So if you say, for example, let's say you rank yourself at a 6 out of 10 for a history, and this 10 out of 10 ideal or masterful performance is over here. Most people will look at the gap and they'll say, well, that's too much. I just can't do it, so I'm not going to do anything. So my piece is, okay, what do you need to do to move from a 6 to a 7? Not a 6 to a 10, but a 6 to a 7. What's that little piece? And you know what? You pick it, and then you're going to practice it in front of your peers. So that's the big scary piece, right? Because we feel we're going to be judged, and we're doing it in front of peers who know what we should be doing. And I create a safe environment. We as a group I set the stage, but the group creates this really tremendous safe environment to be able to give each other constructive feedback that is so empowering. And it's an amazing thing to see how these docs move the needle in where they are to where they want to go. And it's all practically related.
And it sounds like those techniques you could probably share with your patients, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Right, right. So I'm getting it, Liz. So the whole idea, your thing, if you don't mind me describing it that way, is helping to shift people.
Yes, that's exactly it. It's transformation. It's change from within. And you know, we get so stuck inside our brain and the thought processes that go on, and whether they're competing beliefs or limiting beliefs, unconscious beliefs, because we run 90% of our day on unconscious beliefs by the time we're 30. That's what the neuroscience shows us. And we never test some of our beliefs. And let me define a belief a bit. So a belief to me is an assumption or an interpretation of an event, and that event could be real or imagined, and we take it to be true. And so what happens is that we stop ourselves from moving forward because there may be something that if we do that, there's a consequence, and therefore we sabotage ourselves, or it comes out where we just have no motivation. And so the whole piece with transformation is to start to check in with these beliefs, to be brave enough to step forward and see what happens, and then fine tune along the way. So really what I'm looking for people is, what is the feeling you want to create for your preferred future? And when you can stick and hold that feeling, it's amazing, because it's like you generate this orbit of similar feelings. And as a result, that's what you start to see. So the typical example would be, if you're under stress, you see everybody else under stress, and you create fires and emergencies and crises and drama, right? And then, but if you are in elevated state of joy or the love of life, you see things on with a different set of glasses, and the brain wires in a very different way, which allows us to more often than not get into what technically prefrontal cortex, which is where we are able to create and dream and have resourcefulness and vision, and it's all those executive functions. But also, when we are in trust in this area of the brain, we also release dopamine, which is, of course, the bonding hormone, that connection hormone. We release dopamine, which is an anticipation of a positive reward, which ends up elevating our chemistry. And serotonin, which, of course, is that sense of feeling good from the inside out. So we feel like we're coherent in our life. And the thought process that goes on when we're there is so different from when we're in our midbrain, our amygdala and our limbic system in the midbrain, the stress brain, where things become about win, lose. I'm going to be judged, competitiveness, need to be right. There's all these other sort of fight, flight, tell, yell, sell, if you freeze, because some people are like deer in headlights when they get under stress, and other people are just like, oh, I'll just say yes. And we call that appease. So there's a very different conversation that occurs. And I love it when you can see those people start to transform. They upregulate, because it's like, man, I did that. Look at me. Yay, me, And then that makes them want to do more of that, because that feeling feels so good.
Yeah. You have me transformed. I've just been talking to you for the last 15 minutes. I'm ready. You do a workshop called The Best Version of Yourself, of You. It sounds like this is your workshop.
That pretty much is. It really is. And, it's really a joy to do. And it's the beginning of a journey for people. And the key with it is, some people, they just need a little nudge to get started. And other people, you need to hold their hand a little bit more. And then other people will come in and come out because there may be some other challenges. And it's all fine. And I recognize, everyone is on this different journey. And part of the key, I think, is to create space in our life of where we can be present with where we are, to then direct where is it that we would like to be. So it's like coming full circle. When I ask a parent about what do they want for their child, sometimes I actually get a blank stare. If I ask a woman, what do you really want in your life? And I kind of get this, they're not sure. And so they can usually tell you what they don't want, but that doesn't mean that's going to move you in the direction of what you do want. But when I ask people, what do you want to feel? They usually know what they want to feel. And that's the piece that you can tell when you're feeling that way, you're on course, you're probably in alignment with your passions and your values. And when you don't feel that way, that's telling you, whoops, you know what? I'm kind of lost right now, or I've just made a little detour. I need to get back on course. And so really that's sort of the whole idea of the best version of you. It's not about being perfect. It's about moving ourselves forward and using our life experience and our knowledge to create wisdom that allows us to become more masterful in our own life or more excellent in our own life, no matter whatever model and success model, whatever success is for you, or whatever part of life you want to be shining that light on. And that's what's really very cool about it. And then with that, I also have separate too, for the people that are a little bit more self-motivated, that other piece we were talking about, which is Move to Mastery. And that's an online self-directed program. It's roughly 90 days, 9 modules, and there's a lot of inner work that takes a bit of time to do. But what I love about that program is it's available 24/7. So you get into it when you want, you do the work. If you got to put it down and come back to it, you can. Some people get stuck in some areas, meaning before I move forward, I really need to solidify this piece. And the idea is, where do you want to go? And again, it's creating some space so that we can be present with where we are and then figure out some ideas of what is it I want to create? Why do I want why is that important to me?
So, and it sounds like that workshop, the online course as well, is not geared towards chiropractors. It's
No,
anybody can take that course.
anybody can take that course. Yes.
Is it geared more to women or is it men and women?
Men and women. I have had both and different experiences for both, very different. The piece I think some people will say is it feels like they're getting more coherent and into their heart. Other people are like, you know what? I realized where I've had distraction and drama in my life and I'm done with it, and so it's been really neat to observe the people that have been taking it.
I'm curious, who have you looked up to professionally and personally? Who have been your mentors, your people that have guided you? Because I love the fact that you're into this personal growth
Yeah.
because I think that, taking care of ourselves and making sure that we're happy is going to make us healthier as human beings. So, and of course, getting chiropractic care is fantastic, but we also need to have this other connection. So I'm curious, who are the people that have influenced you?
I've had many. So I would say early on, both my parents really did. Sort of unique experiences. My dad was born in Brazil, raised in Africa, schooled in England, came to North America. So he had really interesting perspectives on the world. And certainly my husband, who is really a blessing in so many ways. He's in business, but he leads by heart-centered community thoughtfulness, and he just comes at things in such a unique way to so many people in that world. And then early on in practice, a chiropractor actually out of Australia was really pivotal to me. His name was Jim Carter. He's retired now. And there's a number of my friends in Ontario that we took his course. And that was really about doing the inner work. It really was. And that was really the start for me of the inner work. Wayne Dyer was extremely pivotal. And sadly, he's passed away, but absolutely brilliant in some of his work. I did a lot of work with John DeMartini as well. Sort of more on my mental side is where I find John. And then I trained quite a bit with Jack Canfield as well. And then right now, I would say who I'm really enjoying the work of is Joe Dispenza. And his work is really in that whole quantum field. Thought slows down to create matter. And the things I'm experiencing with some of the meditations and the research behind it, and literally having a brain scan before and after meditation, heart rate variability done before and after meditation, you can actually, at the science part of my brain is just like, wow, this is amazing what we are able to achieve. But I'm a huge reader, and I think that also is a big thing. And I'm able to assimilate a lot of information. So that would be another piece too.
And I noticed, I went to your website, drliz.ca, for those that want to check her out, that you have, if you sign up for your mailing list, you get a meditation.
Yes.
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 So I'm looking forward to getting that and checking that out too. Yeah.
Yeah. Create your day meditation, which is great.
I love it. I love it. We also talked about Pearls of Wisdom, Pure and Powerful. It's a book that you wrote. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So I have an issue with my right foot that is one of the reasons why I'm not in full-time practice, and it's a whole story on its own. But it was interesting in dealing with the foot. I wasn't slowing down my life, and then I had an accident which actually forced me off my feet. So I had a bad fall on, I don't want to say a rock face. That makes it sound too big. It wasn't really that big. But the way I had miscalculated my landing, I snapped my ACL, so the tendons in my knees. So I did reconstructive surgery on that knee. And so while I was healing from that, I was bored. And I'm like, what? And I was meditating one day and it was like, write a book for women. And it's funny because it's not even women that even read the book. It's women and men that read the book. But the idea with it is, isn't it amazing how a pearl is created because of stress to an oyster? And so it was this whole piece on who are we becoming due to the stresses in our lives, and how do we move ourselves through them in a way that we can come out the other side and make a meaningful experience out of whatever it is we've experienced, so that we can move ourselves forward. So that was sort of the premise of the book, and also to get chiropractors in particular to recognize the vitalistic and significant vitalistic portion of the nature of our work in living in accordance to natural law and things like that. And so then I went to a number of my girlfriends to say, would you like to contribute? I gave them all very short time frames because I knew if I gave them a year, one chapter, maximum 30 pages, they would do it the last month. Human nature, right? So I said, yeah, I'm giving you 60 days. Who's in, who's out? I really respected some of the women that said, you know what, would love to do it. Time frame won't work. I really respect their ability to say no for that. And then the other ones were the ones that were saying yes. So in each chapter, there's sort of a different feel. And then I put some questions at the end of each chapter for people to reflect upon. Again, sort of a self-coaching way to move themselves forward.
I love it. Is there anything else that you foresee yourself doing or starting or creating in the next year or 5 years?
Well, I have a book that I've actually written that I need to get back to and finish, and it's really a matter of that extra space to do that. And so I know I've stalled on that, and there's a reason it hasn't come to me yet, but I think it just needs to gestate. And that's called soul to soul. So from the sole of the foot to obviously the sole of the head. So that's one piece I want to be finishing up, and who knows where I'll be next. I follow my heart. I've got flexibility to be able to do that, and that makes it really fun.
That's great. Well, I've really loved speaking with you today, and I do believe my listeners are going to get so much out of this, and I'm going to encourage everyone to go to your website to learn more about what you're doing, possibly buy one of your 5 books, attend the seminar that you've done, attend the online class. People have a lot of options, and of course, if they live near you, maybe they'll bring their children to you as well.
Awesome. Well, it's been, an honor, a delight, a pleasure. Thank you so much for creating this space, and yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, you truly exemplify the heart of chiropractic, so thank you.
You're welcome.